The American dream is something that is often idolized in our culture. Yet, despite this adoration, many prominent authors have decided to challenge it with their writing. Two prime examples of this are The Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison and The Death of a Salesman by Arthur Miller. Each author uses a fictional narrative to push the reader into developing a conclusion and hopefully coming away with the author's intended message. A good way to understand what that intended message could be is to first understand the authors themselves and how their life experiences could have influenced their writing. Ralph Ellison was a black man living in the early 1900s in Oklahoma City. He did not have an easy start. In 1936, he was forced to halt his dreams and move to New York. While this might seem like a step in the wrong direction, it was actually good for him because he met up with a writer named Richard Wright and began writing essays and short films. Ellison also spent a brief amount of time as a cook during World War II. This was about the time that his first novel, The Invisible Man, came into reality. Ellison's life seems like a testament to the American dream. He is a man who has faced adversity and racism since the start of his life. He was forced to put his dreams on hold and move out to a foreign city. Despite this, Ellison made a name for himself as one of the best writers of the time off of his first book. Although Ellison may have met success, his protagonist certainly does not. Perhaps this shows Ralph Ellison used The Invisible Man to express his own feelings towards personal perception versus outward perception, which is a prominent theme in his novel. Our other author, Arthur Miller, was also born in New York in the early 1900s. The Miller family started out more fortunately than the Ellisons, but unfortunately, that didn't last, and the Great Depression wiped them clean. Eventually, Arthur saved up enough money to go to college where he met Kenneth Rowe, a professor and playwright that inspired him to delve into making plays. Miller's first play was met with mostly negative reviews, but his second earned an award, and his third, The Death of a Salesman, instantly propelled him to the top, where he became an instant classic. Much like Ellison, Arthur Miller's life is also a reversal of the character he created. Willie Loman, one of the main cast, spends his whole life trying to be successful and doing what he thinks will bring him wealth instead of pursuing his true passion, eventually dying pointlessly and unfulfilled. This is almost a polar opposite of Arthur Miller, who found success very quickly and became a renowned name doing something that interests him. Both Invisible Man and The Death of a Salesman each contrast with the author's own life. Willie Loman from Death of a Salesman lived in denial his whole life, never pursuing his passion and eventually perishing. Arthur Miller pursued his dream from the start, and Miller clearly had a passion for what he was doing. He got the opportunity to go to college and study under the playwright Kenneth Rowe, and reach notoriety on his second play. There exists a sharp juxtaposition between Arthur Miller and his character, and this juxtaposition is not only present in Miller's life, but Ralph Ellison's as well. Ralph Ellison wrote about a black man who had to deal with numerous hardships and racial injustices, and this man also struggles with perception and is frequently manipulated and used by groups in the novel. Despite the powerlessness and invisibility of the character, Ralph Ellison is anything but that. His words and commentary are still being analyzed and related to modern events today. Another relevant comparison between Invisible Man and Death of a Salesman lies in their conjunctive relevance towards our modern day. In Arthur Miller's The Death of a Salesman, the main character, Bill Loman, goes on a painful journey, eventually arriving at the conclusion that he must break the family cycle and start a new path if he wants to be happy. It is this revelation that causes Bill to get closer to the American dream than his father could ever dream of. Whereas Willie's story was one of heartbreak and wasted potential, Bill was determined to turn out differently. And it is this that ultimately reveals Arthur Miller's thoughts on the American dream. Willie Loman's story could be interpreted in a negative way towards the American dream. He spent his whole life chasing an idea that never came to fruition as he descended into delirium. While this negative interpretation exists, a positive one exists as well. Bill realizes that he wants to be true to himself, and he pursues his own version of the American dream, pushing himself to branch out and start his own path, hopefully finding success and happiness. What makes these messages so iconic is how timeless they really are. A story of a failed father who dies unfulfilled, and a son who wants to become what his father never could, is one that will resonate across generations. Despite our culture rapidly evolving since the story's conception, these roots have remained firm. The Invisible Man and The Death of a Salesman both offer unique yet similar views of the American dream through literature. Each author criticizes the American dream, and their writing contains a contrast between the author's personal lives and that idea. By learning more about these authors' works and personal lives, we were able to understand the different perspectives on the American dream and identify their expression through literature.